Hey, welcome. This tutorial will be about how to structure a web app as a whole. We'll start with what we had last video, which was a server and a static web page, and we'll add different parts and different folders and see how it all fits together. So we're going to divide the web app into two parts. One's going to be the client side, which we will create a folder called client to put those files in, and then the other one is the server side. So we'll create a folder called server. And then we're going to sort of sort these files that we already had into these two halves. So the server goes into the server. This app was a React app that goes into the client. Bundle.js goes into the client. Index goes into the client. And the rest stay in the root folder. Okay, so let's focus on server first. So our server has this single server file, but we sort of want to split it up by function. One thing that we'll end up adding more of are routes. So what we're going to do is actually separate the routes out into a subfolder under server, and then we're going to create one file for the index route. That's the route that we already have here. So this route that handles the GET request at the root, we're going to move into this file, and we're going to have to make some modifications to get these two files to work with each other. So first of all, we were going to need to import those routes into our server file. So we'll use nodes require to do so. And then the way we use that is by simply doing app.use on the root and giving it the index routes. Okay. Alright, now we'll fill in the index.js file. So we're also going to need the path package here. In fact, we don't need it anymore in server, so let's get rid of that line in server. And then what we're also going to need is a what we will call a router. So Express has this way of creating objects called routers, which really just help with defining the routes, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So we'll do router.get to define the route on the root, and then finally we'll just export. We'll use module.exports to export this route. Alright, and so this is what we're importing over in the server file, and we're using it on the root endpoint. Great, so now we have the routes folder. The reason I like to create a folder for this is down the line we're going to be making a lot of endpoints for the API, dealing with the database and passing data back and forth. And for all those routes, we're going to need to define endpoints, just like this one. And it's much easier to do that in separate files divided by the type of object that we're communicating data about. And so those will go in different files, and all those files will go in the routes folder. So that's sort of the structure for the backend. Another thing we can pull out of this file is the very last part where we serve the app. And the reason we want to separate this out is this is actually what we call, this is the entry point from the command line, where we call node on the file that has this app.listen code. So what we're going to do is actually separate this out, and we're going to export the app. So we're just going to stop here and export the app from this file, and we're going to create a new file, actually in a new folder. So we're going to create a folder called bin and a new file called www, just following standard naming conventions. And here we're going to import that app from server/app. slash server. Okay, so then this does exactly what it used to do, but it's in this file rather than the other one. Okay, so now we moved some things around, so we need to fix a few references. First of all, let's fix that. That tells it it's a folder rather than a node module. And then we need to fix the directory here. So instead of using this folder, current folder, which is server, as the static directory, we actually want to use the folder one up and then over into client. So the client folder will become our static folder. Okay, and then we also need to change a directory. This looks all good, but we need to move over here and change the directory for the index file, because now that is actually, so it's in server/routes. So we need to go up one folder to server, another folder to the root, and then into client, and that's where index.html is found in this structure. Okay, so we have a bit of a structure for the back end, and now we can look at the front end. So we have our app.js that has sort of all the React parts of our app, and we'd like to separate this out into components. So we're going to create a component folder. And so whenever we create a new component, we'll have a file for that component, and that file will go into this folder. In fact, app itself is a component, as you can see right here. So we're going to put app into that folder, and in place of it, we're going to create a new file called index.js that will perform this rendering in the app div in our HTML file. So we're going to divide all the functionality here between these two files. So in this file, we will not be defining the app class. Instead, we will be importing app from components/app, and that's in this folder. And in fact, then we don't need to import React either. So we just have React DOM and app. And then in app.js, we don't need React DOM. We don't need to render anything onto the DOM. What we need to do is export this class, which is our app component. All right, so now we have the front end sort of structured. We have a components folder that we can easily build upon by adding more components. And we have the main React file and the main HTML file. And then we also have, of course, our bundle file that Webpack produces. So finally, the last thing we need to tweak here are the paths in the Webpack file. We can't forget about this. We need to change our entry point to be now client. So we go into client and index.js. From index, we require app, which the dependency manager will detect and automatically add app into our bundle.js as well. And then we want our output to be now in the directory that we're currently in, and then move down into the client folder. So that fixes that issue. And now we can try it and see if Webpack still works. Just as we ran it before, do npm run Webpack, and so it runs Webpack and produces that bundle.js file. Now nothing has changed, so it should look the same. And so Webpack works, so let's try running the server. As we have our code for running the server here, we will need to call node on this file. Okay, so we have an issue where we on line 18 in server, so let's see what's happening there. So we're doing path.join, and it says path is not defined. So that was a mistake in taking path out of this file. We do still, in fact, need it. And great, so it is running on localhost 8000. And just to verify that our app still looks the same, let's check it out in the browser. So if we go to localhost 8000, there it is. There's our app that we had before. We have a missing h1 text. Let's see why that's not showing up. It says React is not defined. And so let's look at our front-end files. Here we have React. It looks great. In index.js, we have React DOM, but we can try importing React here as well. Okay, so we'll have to stop that and run Webpack once again. And there we go. So now we have new bundle.js. And so let's run our server once again and check out what we have if we refresh the page. There we go, it shows up. So we have our same app as before. Nothing really changed functionality, but we do have a much more organized structure, and more importantly, this is something that we can add to a lot more easily as we continue developing the app. So hopefully that was helpful in understanding the structure of a web app, and good luck.